booties for black girl nerds.
Intimidation.
Hello, how you guys doing?
How are you?
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for asking. Matt, I'm going to start with you. Daemon has been through so much grief, and it's slowly become a part of him at this point. Do you feel like at this point that he's become more measured in his response to grief, or is he even more bitter and more of a rogue than he was in season 1?
Very good question. I mean, I don't know in terms of those two parameters, but I do think that the grief is a catalyst for his unraveling in this particular series, and he certainly enters a place that feels a bit like a vortex or an emotional storm, inwardly and sort of mythically and outwardly. So he's in for a tough ride either way, because I don't think he's dealt with the grief of his brother going, or the grief that he's caused other people in many ways.
Yeah, grief is certainly a catalyst this season for a lot of the characters.
I think so.
Yeah. Fabien, over to you. Cole is this self-made guy who's managed to get himself in a very privileged position of power. And he's better off now than he used to be, but yet he still hangs on to the past. Why do you think he still hangs on to the past?
I think, being trapped inside of the castle, the way he is, I think as human beings, at least certainly the way that I deal with any pain is to remove myself from the place of pain, and to live where you work, to sleep where you work, to eat where you work, and to never be anywhere else. I think means that it's very hard to get away from his pain in that way. And I think, he probably just needs a holiday or something. but I mean,
let's get him down on Ibiza.
Yeah.
Needs more than that. He needs therapy.
Get him to Pasha.
Let's get him out that armor and down Pasha.
Matt, back over to you.
Yes.
How does the set costumes, the props, the designs of the sets help inform your performance playing this character? Does it help transform you, or at the end of the day, can you just look at the script, read Daemon, and it doesn't matter either way?
No, I think all of the things that you've just mentioned, all of those elements, certainly inform the way you move, the way you sit, the way you articulate your body via the character every day. I mean, or indeed with the armor, which both me and Fabien can attest to, is the ample restrictions that it places on you, because you can't really move in it, So I'm always trying desperately not to wear it. Because it's just, you can't move.
Not at all.
Yeah,
absolutely horrible.
One of my great pleasures of this job is seeing Fabien suffer in the armor, and it's because our stories go different ways this year. I've missed that immeasurably, actually.
Yeah. It's such a sadness that my sort of great displeasure is Matt's highlight of the job.
And a lot. Listen, not just mine. Rhys Ifans as well is a big fan.
Yeah, but he's got that helmet, so it's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, how does that make you feel? Him saying that, Fabien,
I feel
you suffering.
I've been dealing with it for 2.5 years, so I feel like I'm sort of.
You wear it well.
I wear it as well as one can. Rhys always says that, if you were to sort of drop me in the armor down the stairs, it would sound like a drum kit, and I think that's just about right. So. It's quite good, isn't it? You also said I look like an airport terminal once.
We've seen a dramatic emotional shift in Criston Cole throughout season 1. At this point, has it reached its peak, or has he not yet reached his boiling point?
No, sadly not. It's good to tune in for the next 3 episodes and see it reach its peak. No, I mean, you've seen the first 2, have you?
I have.
So it's only getting worse, and I think that the end of episode 1, the way the last couple of scenes of that episode, I think Criston Cole feels a great deal of guilt about his responsibility in that whole event happening. And that I think is going to be very much the catalyst in his actions in the following sort of 4 episodes.
Well, thank you, Fabien. Thank you, Matt, so much for
Thank you
taking
so
the time
much.
to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the time. Have a wonderful season.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for your kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Good chat. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. So no one knew the success of what House of the Dragon would bring season 1. So there was a lot of pressure to measure up to what Game of Thrones delivered for us. So now that we obviously see that House of the Dragon is on the same level in terms of success as Game of Thrones, going into season 2, do you feel less pressure going in doing this, or do you feel more pressure to raise the bar?
I don't know that we're as successful as Game of Thrones yet. I mean, that was a global, international, intergalactic phenomenon. I'm very humbled and honored to even be considered in the same sentence as that original series. I think we have a ways to go before we write ourselves into the cultural landscape the way they did. But I do appreciate it. Look, that was an incredibly hard act to follow. It's not something that you take lightly or do lightly, or presume that is going to just, one audience translates to the other. I honestly was shocked at how many people showed up right out of the gate for our show. Shocked and honored and very pleased. Pleasant surprise in a business that doesn't offer a lot of pleasant surprises. So I think that was the pressure in season 1 was, is anybody going to watch it? And now in season 2, the it's a different kind of pressure, and one that I welcome, which is how do we outdo ourselves? How do we make it even better than we did in season 1? So we've taken that on, and I think in many ways, in most ways, I think we've done that and delivered something that builds upon, honors what we did in season 1, and raises the stakes.
Well, when you're breaking records the way you guys did in season 1, I definitely feel like you guys are at similar levels with Game of Thrones. So appreciate that. I do kind of want to ask a little bit of a spoilery-ish question. And the reason why is because I feel like it's very important for our audience here at Black Girl Nerds. There is a character in the book that's a Dragonseed character by the name of Nettles. Is there at least a path to her story that we will get to in House of the Dragon?
I mean, I'm not ready to comment on any characters that we haven't met on screen yet. So I would just say stay tuned.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. You've mentioned that editing has been used as a tool to bring the characters of Alicent and Rhaenyra together, because we don't really see them together in a lot of scenes during this season. So can you kind of share an example of what that looks like in season 2?
Yeah, well, and sure. And you've seen episodes 1 and 2, yes?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the first instance that comes to mind is the end of episode 1, where Rhaenyra has returned from her quests at Storm's End, and returned with Luke's body, and is now cleaned up and put herself together, and is mourning in her bedchamber when Jace returns, having flown in from the north, and comes to try to report to his mother, and then breaks down, and they share that really, really moving embrace together. We cut from that to Alicent going to the sept to light candles for the dead, and she lights 3 candles, and she says, Alarie Florent, who is her mother, who we know she goes to the sept to light candles for, and then Viserys Targaryen, her fallen husband, and then the 3rd candle she lights is for Lucerys Velaryon, and she hesitates before she does it, and she almost whispers it because she wouldn't want anybody on her side to know that she's doing this. But he's a child. It makes sense that that she would feel some kind of empathy for her former friend's lost son. And we intercut between Alicent lighting the candles to Rhaenyra burning Luke's clothes and belongings on Dragonstone. So even though those characters are in 2 entirely different places, the editing of that sequence unites them, brings them together, and shows us how this one event, or the usurping of Rhaenyra's throne, and then the murder of Luke, has brought brought them together, and how they are feeling, complicated emotions that kind of interweave with their old friend, even though they're 100 miles across the bay.
I love it. I love seeing how editing kind of brings all of that together, and I can't wait to see how more of those episodes be able to see these two characters interact. While tragedy and grief are the cornerstone to the overall narrative of what we can expect to see this season, I'm curious to know, are there any moments of humor and levity that audiences will expect to see this season?
I think so. I think we look, I love a good Game of Thrones joke. I mean, you need it to break the tension sometimes. I think Tom Glynn-Carney has brought a lot of that, certainly in episode 1, as he tries to fit in the big boots of being the king. There's some humor there, and yeah, I think throughout the season we do have moments where we're commenting on the high stakes and the often absurd nature of the situation that these characters find themselves in.
Well, I can't wait to see more of, the 2 episodes that I saw where you dove right in. There was no filler, you just went for the gut, and I really appreciate it. So Ryan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the conversation.
Great. It was nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you guys. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thanks for asking. Olivia, I'm going to start with you. Now that Alicent has undergone this power shift to being the queen to now being the queen who once was, how is she reconciling with that this season?
I don't think I think she really underestimated how that shift in power would really affect her, and how she would then be seen on the small council, and what her role would then be like within the realm. I think anointing her son onto the Iron Throne, I think she thought she would still be a necessity within the castle.
Yeah.
I think she thought she'd have the ear to her son no matter what. I think she thought she'd be able to rule sort of in the shadows, because she, even though that's what she thought Viserys wanted, I think she doesn't see him as a worthy ruler at all. She knows his temperament. She knows he's not a good person at all, and she knows he's got all the qualities that would make a very, very bad king, and would have the realm be in abject chaos. So when she does suddenly begin to feel shunned by her closest members of her family, I think that is something that propels her into the season, and we see her course change forever, really.
Yeah, and what a change that is that we're going to experience this season. Phia, for you, for those of us that are familiar with Dance of the Dragons, Helaena goes through some things. As you were preparing for this role, what headspace did you put yourself in to emotionally prepare yourself for what's to come? Did you listen to some Spotify playlists of Enya? Did you go through some meditation music? What did you do to put yourself into that headspace?
Like, all really good ideas, actually. I could have done with this a few months ago. I try not to overthink it, but I do poems. Like do you know the Staying Alive and the Being Alive poetry books? They're amazing. They're like these huge anthologies. I can't remember who anthologizes them, but they're like amazing collections of poetry that are under like different chapters, which are like all themes, but like quite unusual themes, and they're really good. There's like 3 of them, I think. They're really, really useful because you can kind of go through on themes and then find things like perspectives that are really interesting. And then I tend to, like, if this is for a scene specifically that I'm like worried about, but I'll this is kind of a relatively, well, no, maybe it's not a new thing, but I'll just maybe sometimes, if I feel like I need it, I'll have like a poem for a scene that then I'll like go to my little tent and read it and try and be like, how do I make me feel like it did when I was in my kitchen 6 days ago? And I decided to print this one out. Yeah, so poetry, I think poetry is amazing for that, because it's like, there can be so much in such a concise moment, and just, frozen.
Sort of consolidates all the emotions that you need, doesn't it?
Completely, and it can really have it all. So sometimes poetry, and sometimes actually it's really good to just be like, I'm gonna have a good time today and like have a laugh, because otherwise, because then something opens up and you're a bit more likely to like go surprise yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you go like that, you can
sort of be weighed down by that, and then you can't really see the surface.
Because you need to have hope, don't you? Otherwise it's not sad. Yeah, I guess.
Poetry and mantras. Note to self. I will do that. I like that idea of the poetry stuff. That is a great
you should check out the anthology. I think I'm not the first. I mean, Meryl Streep's actually on the front, like, I love this. I'm like buying that one.
Well, Olivia, Phia, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really enjoyed just the first 2 episodes that I got to screen so far. I mean, you guys came right out of the gate with these episodes, and I can't wait to watch the rest of the season. So thank you.
So much. Thank you so much.
Take care. Hi,
you doing?
Tom. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for asking. So the overall theme of this series is centered in grief, but also these characters can't seem to let go of the past. Why do you think it's so hard for Aegon to move forward as he's dealing with his own grief?
Because that's all he's ever known. He's only ever known to be kind of sidelined and kind of invisible to everyone. Which is why he has tried to escape his responsibilities up until this point. It's too deeply entrenched in him now for him to start forgiving people and moving on with life. That's not an option.
Yeah, indeed. Are there any aspects to Aegon's personality that you personally identify with, and does that help enhance or inform your performance at all?
We're very different, thankfully, but there are definitely you have to find similarities, I think, with any character you play, even if they're kind of like fictional ones that you kind of make up yourself and aren't necessarily in the script, but just sort of routine things, But I think we're both quite cheeky, I think. We both like to push the boundaries somewhat. That's similarly kind of, the insecurities that we both have. There's a kind of a vulnerability and I find myself often incapable of, depending on the situation, of sort of digesting emotions and feelings in a way that is healthy. So yeah, there's definitely that comparison too. But enough about me exposing myself.
Well, one of the things that I'm also curious about too is, this season is a lot of the other your fellow colleagues have been saying that grief is the catalyst that's moving the characters' motivations this season. So obviously it's shrouded in grief, many of the stories that's centered around this universe, but is there any light and levity around what's going to be happening with Aegon this season? Are we going to see any moments of happiness from his character?
Sure, yeah. I mean, episode 1 is, we see a lot of levity to him. We see him sort of, taking the responsibility of king seriously and having, this is the first time we've seen him with purpose, and I think that he wears that quite well and he's enjoying how that feels. Excuse me. Yeah, so, and it also leaves him somewhere to go. We've not end gamed already, so yeah. Read into that how you will.
We want to see more of Aegon as a father to his children this season, or we kind of do see a little bit more of that. What kind of father would you describe Aegon to be?
I think he's a very proud father. This is something by this I mean his children. This is a creation of his. This is something that's come from him, that is pure, that is new, that is living, that is beautiful, that he's proud of. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised that he has the capacity to love and to be don't get me wrong, I don't think he's a very present father, but I think he's very proud, and I think he wants to be. But his dad to him wasn't very present. It wasn't very. It didn't acknowledge him even. So I think he wants to kind of redesign himself through the means of his own children. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Yeah. What do you, I mean, you're now 2 seasons into playing this character. What are you the most proud of so far, and being a part of this experience of working on House of the Dragon and just playing this role?
I'm just proud of, to be honest, I'm proud of everyone. I'm just proud of seeing how hard people work, and then watching them sort of soak in the validation and the appreciation of people who like the show. It's so nice to see. I've made some of the best friends I've ever had on this show, and it's so nice to do things like this. Travel the world with them and speak to people like yourselves, and sort of see them kind of get animated and excited about the work that we've put in, because it's a long thing. It takes its time, and it takes a lot out of you. So it's nice that we get to then go and shout about it to people and be, because we're all fans of the show as well.
Yeah. Well, fans will be looking forward to seeing these episodes when they come out. I watched the first 2, was blown away already. So thank you, Tom, so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the conversation.
Absolute pleasure. Nice to chat to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Hi, Ewan. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you looked up the word insecure in the dictionary, I'm sure you would find Aemond Targaryen's photograph there. He is definitely what happens when you don't deal with your insecurities. Yeah. Why, or where, I should ask, do you think his insecurities come from?
His insecurities, I think it very much from his environment and his upbringing. He was a kid who was neglected and bullied. He had his eye taken from him when he claimed Vhagar, the largest, baddest, oldest dragon in the known world, and so he very much cultivated this image that kind of hides that kid that was hurt, back then. And for sure, his ego is a product of that insecurity. It's a facade that he's manufactured over the years, so he doesn't get hurt ever again.
Indeed, yes, and what a ego that is. What I love about this show is that these characters are so complex, and that there are so many different layers to them. Will we see a much softer side of Aemond this season?
For sure. I mean, season 1 in a show full of morally compromised grey characters, I wanted to present a character who at that point in his life was just complete darkness. His image, lends to that, so I wanted to lean into that as much as possible. Season 2, you are going to see those different sides. You are going to see another angle to Aemond. He's not just that, one-dimensional black hat villain. There is something else underneath the surface.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing how the trajectory of his character develops and grows and evolves throughout this season.
It's wild. Yeah.
It's wild is probably an understatement for sure. Now that you're 2 seasons in playing this character, what have you enjoyed most about being Aemond?
The collaboration. Working with Amanda Knight, our hair and makeup designer, the costume designer in Caroline McCall, their work combined really does encourage you to abandon who you are. I can't be anything less than interesting without saying a word, with the long hair and the Targaryen blacks. You know, the leather that Aemond wears is so skin tight. There isn't much space between you or the costume, and so you really do feel one of the same. And just that sense of collaboration and that passion that reverberates from the set is addictive.
This is a question that I asked Matt earlier, and I'm curious what your take is on this. You know, there's these elaborate sets, there's these really great design pieces, there's the costumes. Does that inform your performance as an actor and help transform you into this role? Or do you not need that? You can read the script as Aemond and it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I love about Jim Clay's, production design of the Red Keep is that all of the different rooms are geographically linked with corridors, and so you can really afford those long-running takes, those steady cam shots, without breaking the scene. And so it's immersion taken to 11. You know, when the house lights go down and the candles come up, you can't help but escape into this world, and it's a lot of it is down to the phenomenal Jim Clay. I'd love to know what inspired his sets, because as an actor, you do feel really inspired when you're on them.
You do. Yeah, you do. Well, listen, I dove into those first 2 episodes. They really hit me at the core. I love the fact that there's no filler. It just goes straight to the story. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the conversation, and have a wonderful season.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Jamie. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hello.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Eve. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. A pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, I want to start with you. First of all, thank you for following us on Instagram and liking our posts.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate that. You mentioned that this season Corlys has to confront his past. Does that affect a lot of the decisions that he makes as we follow his journey in season 2?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Yes, I suppose it does, because if you are in a situation where the sacred space, the sacred thing that you have is your relationship, and this thing that rears its head could possibly damage that, you cannot help but take it into account in whatever you do. So he's trying to save this relationship, but also stay true to himself. Because I think, okay, we talked about the thing where she says to him, "Will you stay?" And he goes, "No, I need to be at sea because that's who I am." So yeah, he's trying to walk a tightrope, which is very unusual for him, because normally when things get a bit tough emotionally, he just gets in the boat and goes off for a couple of years. He's unable to do that this time. A bit like the kid who just goes on his bike and runs away for the whole day and then comes back thinking that the parents have forgotten. That's his idea. What happened 6 years ago? Yeah. But in this case, he can't, because he's still recovering from his injury and his ship is in a state of disrepair. So he has to face up to the consequences.
Face the music.
Has to face the music. Has to man up. But yes, it's going to always be something that dictates what he does, at least in the first half of the season, at least.
I tuned into the press conference yesterday, and Eve, I was very surprised to learn that you have never seen an episode of House of the Dragon.
Except for last night. I watched the first episode of the first season because we had to because we were that for the premiere, and then last night I was really keen to sneak out the back because I just couldn't. I feel hot and sweaty. But I was encouraged to stay, and it's just I don't know. It's just a crazy kind of. It's not even a superstition. It's just I feel physically sick, and it's just what it does to me. I think, and I'm just really sure I'm not alone in this. It just takes you out of the world, and it takes you out of yourself, and you start looking at things from an objective perspective. that's, to me, that's kind of fatal, because you start objectifying.
Subjective.
Yeah, when you start objectifying your
Yourself,
character, yourself, and you start having opinions and thoughts about yourself, whereas actually when you're inside it, our only job is to get inside the head of these people and operate entirely as they might operate.
Yes.
So if you have, for me, it just messes with my head too much. And I just, I start looking at, I don't like this, and I want to correct that. And I can't, there's too many that's and too much that, not enough that.
Yeah.
And,
I discovered that I hadn't watched the whole season. I only discovered that until 2 or 3 days ago.
What?
That I hadn't watched the whole season. I thought I had. I'd actually told myself that I'd watched the whole season. And so for So for the last couple of years, I thought I had, until I was in the hotel room flicking through, and I told you, episode 8 was on, and I knew what happened because I'd read the script. But as I was watching, I was like, I've never actually seen this. No. And so I ended up watching, they were binging them. So I watched 8, 9, and 10 for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm
looking forward to seeing it one day.
I'm wondering, do you ever plan to watch it, or will you at least watch Game of Thrones?
One day, I think I'll probably have a binge.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be great.
You will.
That's the only way to watch it, in my opinion.
That binge. Yeah. Cool.
Steve, back to you. Corlys doesn't get the privilege of riding dragons. Have you ever felt tempted to want to ride one of the dragons on set just to feel like you can blend in with the rest of the cast?
Part of the gang.
Do you know what? Initially, when we came to do season 1, I was like, I want to do a dragon. Why don't I get a dragon? What's the matter with you? And they were like, you've got both. And I was like, I don't care. I want a dragon. But every time I hear people talk about the experience of actually doing it, I'm like, actually, no, you're good. You're good. I'm great. We're both fine. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. People standing in front of me with leaf blowers, blowing dirt into my face and screaming, bank, there's a dragon over there. I'm no, thank you. I'm very happy.
Like you're on a motorbike. What's a motorbike? I don't know.
No, all good.
Yeah, you're well out of it.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing you guys back this season. I saw the first 2 episodes, blew me away. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Eve, so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful season.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
You too.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. So good to see you guys on Zoom. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me.
No worries. Thanks for having us.
Lovely to see you.
So Bethany, I will start with you. I tuned into the press conference the other day, and I did not know that this is the first time you get to ride a dragon for the first time this season. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. I mean, I've been thinking a lot this week about what the most magical moment on set was, and I think it was the first time that I was on Moondancer. And I just didn't quite expect it to feel so epic, which maybe sounds silly because obviously it's dragon riding, but it just felt unbelievable. And it was the first time that I got to see on eye level how many people it takes to make this show work. When they throw you up in the air on that rig, you're above the whole room, so you really do see every single crew member that's in that day. And that for me was just like mind-blowing. And then the actual dragon riding itself is incredible. The way they do it is you get to see the animation first of how it's going to be, and then you jump on and you've seen yourself already, and then they add all the CGI, and yeah, just unbelievable.
It's interesting hearing the different actors' experiences. You say it's an epic experience. Eve says it's a terrible experience.
Eve hates it. Eve hates it so much. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Harry, over to you. You also in the press conference, you mentioned that wearing the costumes felt like a very immersive experience. So can you elaborate more on what you meant by that? And did it help enhance your performance playing Jace?
In Winterfell it was very interesting because I got to wear that massive like coat, and it was different because obviously we haven't seen Jason like a different climate before, so that was quite interesting. And I never thought I would wear a massive big fur coat, but it was beautiful and it looks great on screen. But we've all got new costumes this year. I think all of us have, right? Yeah. I keep saying this, but season 2 is just genuinely like a level up. Caroline did such a great job this season, and even just the little bits that you guys don't see, it looks brilliant from the outside, but on the inside she'll make sure we're comfortable. You know, we're not struggling in the heat of the summer while trying to shoot this season, and also making it quick and easy to get off if we ever need to go to the toilet or anything like that. Little things like that mean a lot to us, so we really appreciate Caroline for that. But the big plus side is that we look great. So yeah, and also it just, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, it kind of dissociates yourself from the character. You just sort of become the character straight away, which is really, really cool.
Now that's a great costume designer, being comfortable but looking good while being comfortable.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Bethany, back to you. You mentioned Baela's relationship with Rhaenys makes her a more fierce and stronger leader. So can you elaborate on that? Because I really love that point that you made also.
Thank you. I mean, when Helaena died, Baela was sent to ward with Rhaenys and Corlys, and she didn't know that Corlys was gonna run away, but he did. And so it meant that the two of them got to spend all of that time on Driftmark by themselves. So she got to learn how to run the place. She got to learn how to run Driftmark, and she saw Rhaenys kind of stand in for Corlys that whole time that he was away. And not only did that, she taught her how to dragon ride, and she did all of the things that she would have done for Helaena for her. So I just think that she's grown up with her as her like matriarchal figure. And now they've come to Dragonstone together, and this war's kind of happened. But I like to think of it as they just like saw that as another day. They went to Dragonstone to fight for Driftmark, and then someone's head got chopped off, and then they got stuck there. Like, that's how it all kind of happened. But I think she sees Rhaenys as the person that inspires her the most and who she most wants to be like.
That's so beautiful. And on the flip side of that, Harry, for you, you don't have a father figure to kind of help you in that way. So where does Jace's strength come from?
I would say, well, especially this season, I've tried to mix it together literally between his stepdad, Daemon, and his real mother, Rhaenyra. I've just tried to mix the qualities, because I suppose Rhaenyra and Daemon is all he's learning from, except for when he's getting looked after by the Maesters, but he's not going to ever be like the Maesters, you know. I feel like he has the confidence of Daemon, but the sort of courage and devotion and strength of Rhaenyra. So I've really tried to sort of merge the two. But I think Jace admires Daemon as much as, you know, sometimes he doesn't appreciate what he does. I think he admires him, and he's kind of a wannabe Daemon. He kind of wants to be like him, which I think is interesting, really, because he's gone through so many father figures, and his head's all over the place. He's unsure.
Yeah, indeed. Well, listen, I screened the first 2 episodes, loved every single bit of it. I can't wait for everyone to see it. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely to chat.
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I'm really excited to speak with you because I thoroughly enjoy your performance on this series. And the reason why is I like watching you when you are not speaking. All the non-dialogue scenes with you as Larys is just so phenomenal to watch because you have these shifty eyes, the body language. It's really impeccable. So is a lot of the non-speaking performance of your character, is that improvised or is that scripted?
I don't know. I based a lot of it on have you ever seen the show Couples Therapy?
I have not.
Well, it's an amazing show, and there's the clinical psychiatrist on that is Dr. Orna Grolnick, I think is her name, and her quality of listening is extraordinary. She's really like laser focused on her patients or clients, and just you get the sense that she's completely absorbing every aspect of the person, and picking up on everything. And I suppose she's sort of the definition of an active listener. And looking at the script, and like you say, his dialogue is quite sparse. And I think he even says when you're not invited to speak, you learn to observe, and how to make that active. And she was a real inspiration for that.
Well, you do a good job, because I just enjoy watching those scenes and those moments with you actively listening as Larys.
Actively listening, thank you.
So grief is the catalyst for what drives the actions of these characters this season. Does Larys feel any grief for the things that he's done, or even the current circumstances that he's in?
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of grief, actually, Larys, as a character. I think he's got a lot of trauma, really. I think he's been shaped by grief and shaped by trauma and shaped by the abuse and attitudes of that he suffered from growing up in the disability that he has. So I think he's got a lot of emotion in that respect, but I think he's learnt to control it or put a lid on it, and that it's not useful. And I think he's sort of priding himself on being able to take all of those things and put them in a box and just be able to react quite coldly. But that doesn't mean that they're not there. And I think they come out in little surprising moments throughout the season.
Oh, I look forward to watching those surprising moments for sure. On the flip side of that, while tragedy and grief are the cornerstone to the overall narrative of this show, are there any moments of humor and levity that we'll see from your character this season?
Oh, he's working on a Type 5 stand-up set, but it's not going well. I wish I don't know, really. I think there are a few more. I hope there's some later moments and some levity sprinkled throughout, but I couldn't say for sure that they come necessarily from Larys. But who knows?
You're now 2 seasons in playing this character. What have you enjoyed most about playing him? It seems like you're having such a good time.
Oh, great. It's nice playing people with secrets. But it's also, I think I said earlier, it's nice this season for him to have to work really hard. Not everything goes his way this season, and he thinks he's in a position of safety, and then the board shifts and he has to shift with it, and he has to scramble and adapt and improvise. And that's fun to play someone working, someone fighting against obstacles. That's been very, very enjoyable to play.
Well, I can't wait to see the rest of Larry's story throughout this season and throughout the rest of these episodes. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Black Girl Nerds.
Thank you so much.
Really
and check out Couples Therapy. It's a great show.
I will.
Really
I definitely will.
It's very, very cool.
Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds.